The moment they realize you're gone forever, they don't cry. They freeze. Because what just disappeared wasn't just you. It was their sense of power. And what happens next isn't what movies show. It's quieter, more unsettling, because the real reaction is hidden, even from themselves. If this resonates with your experience, pause here, take a breath. And if you're finding clarity in this, stay with me, because understanding this moment changes how you heal. When a narcissistic person loses you permanently, the experience does not register as grief in the way it would for someone with emotional depth and secure attachment. Grief requires the ability to feel loss, to miss the other person as a separate human being, and to tolerate vulnerability without immediately defending against it. A narcissistic personality structure does not have that capacity. Instead, the loss is experienced as an ego injury, which is a direct threat to their self-image, identity, and sense of superiority. You were not simply someone they cared about. You were a psychological resource. You reflected admiration, attention, stability, and emotional regulation back to them. When that resource disappears, the internal alarm is not, "I lost someone I loved," but "something essential to my self-concept has been taken away." This is why their reaction often feels cold, confusing, or even cruel. Ego injury activates defense mechanisms immediately. Rather than sadness, you see denial, minimization, blame, or contempt. Their mind rushes to protect the fragile image they rely on to function. Admitting grief would require acknowledging dependence, vulnerability, and emotional need, which directly contradicts how they see themselves. So instead of mourning, they attack the meaning of the relationship itself. They downgrade your importance, rewrite history, or convince themselves you were flawed, dramatic, or replaceable. This is not reflection, it is psychological damage control. Internally, the injury creates agitation, restlessness, and a desperate need to restore balance. That balance comes not from healing, but from regaining validation. This is why they may seek attention elsewhere almost immediately. It is not moving on, it is self-repair. The emptiness they feel is not longing for you, but panic at the collapse of an external support they depended on without realizing it. Your absence exposes a hollow space they cannot soothe on their own, so they rush to cover it rather than feel it, protecting the ego at all costs while remaining emotionally untouched by true loss. When a narcissistic person realizes you are gone forever, what rises to the surface is not sadness or remorse, but shame. This is a critical distinction. Sadness allows reflection and emotional processing, while shame feels annihilating to someone whose identity is built on superiority and control. Shame threatens the carefully constructed image they rely on to function, so it cannot be consciously tolerated. Instead of sitting with the pain of losing you, they experience an intense internal exposure, as though something private and defective has been revealed. This is why their reaction often looks disproportionate, confusing, or emotionally disconnected. Shame is deeply destabilizing for them because it contradicts the narrative they live by, that they are desirable, exceptional, and always in control. Your permanent absence quietly communicates something they cannot argue with, that they were not enough to keep you. Even if they tell themselves the breakup was mutual or your fault, the finality of your leaving undermines the illusion of omnipotence. Unlike conflict or temporary distance, permanence removes the possibility of reclaiming dominance. This is not interpreted as loss of love, but as exposure of weakness. Because shame is intolerable, it must be deflected. This is where you see blame shifting, contempt, or emotional withdrawal. They may devalue you, mock your importance, or erase the relationship entirely in conversation. This is not indifference, it is psychological self-protection. By diminishing you, they attempt to diminish the threat your departure represents. In some cases, shame converts into rage because anger feels more powerful than vulnerability. In others, it becomes numbness, an emotional shutdown designed to avoid collapse. What makes this reaction hidden is that it rarely looks like pain. There are no apologies, no longing messages, no quiet reflection. Instead, there is silence, distraction, or sudden confidence. But underneath, shame lingers as a low-grade unrest. It drives the need to be admired elsewhere, to be seen as wanted, to prove to themselves more than anyone else that your leaving did not matter. The absence of grief is not strength, it is avoidance. They are not healing from the loss. They are defending against the unbearable realization that your departure forced upon them, that they are not immune to abandonment, and that permanence stripped away their sense of control. When a narcissistic person realizes you are gone forever, what destabilizes them most is not the loss of affection, companionship, or emotional connection, but the loss of control. Control is the axis around which their relationships revolve. It allows them to regulate their self-worth, manage their internal chaos, and maintain the illusion of dominance. Love, in a healthy sense, is mutual and unpredictable, but control is something they believe they can maintain through manipulation, withdrawal, charm, or intimidation. When you leave permanently, every one of those tools fails at once. Your final absence removes their ability to influence your emotions, your availability, and your perception of them. This creates a psychological free fall. Even if the relationship was painful or volatile, it still functioned as a system they could predict and manage. Arguments, breakups, and reconciliations all kept them in a position of relevance. Permanence ends the cycle entirely. There is no reaction to provoke, no explanation to demand, no emotional lever left to pull. That absence of access is far more threatening than emotional loss, because it means they no longer exist at the center of your emotional world. This is why their internal reaction often includes panic disguised as indifference. Control gave them reassurance that they mattered, that they could still affect you if they chose to. When that reassurance disappears, it exposes a deep insecurity they have spent a lifetime avoiding. Without control, they are forced to confront uncertainty, something they cannot tolerate. The mind responds by searching for substitutes, new people, new conflicts, new forms of validation to recreate the sense of dominance that was lost. What they truly mourn is not the relationship, but the position they held within it. Being able to pull you closer or push you away reinforced their belief in their own power. Your permanent departure collapses that belief. Even if they convince themselves they never cared, the loss of control leaves a quiet but persistent agitation. They may obsess over whether you think of them, whether you regret leaving, or whether they could still provoke a reaction, not because they want reconciliation, but because any response would confirm relevance. Your silence denies them that confirmation, forcing them to sit with a truth they find unbearable. That influence over you is gone, and with it the illusion that they were in charge all along. When a narcissistic person realizes you are gone forever, one of the most confusing aspects of their reaction is how unaffected they appear. On the surface, they may seem calm, detached, or even relieved, as if your absence barely registers. This outward indifference is not a sign of emotional strength or genuine closure. It is a carefully constructed defense designed to conceal internal panic. Showing distress would require acknowledging dependence, vulnerability, and loss of control, all of which threaten their fragile self-image. So instead, they perform indifference as a form of self-preservation. Internally, however, the experience is far from calm. Your permanence triggers a sudden collapse of predictability. Even conflict once served a purpose. It kept you engaged and emotionally available. When you disappear without return, the familiar emotional feedback loop vanishes. This creates a disorienting sense of instability. They may feel restless, irritable, or unsettled without being able to identify why. Because they lack emotional insight, this discomfort is rarely recognized as fear. Instead, it is masked by distraction, productivity, or exaggerated confidence. This is why they often overcompensate after the loss. You may notice sudden displays of success, social activity, or happiness, especially in ways that seem performative. These behaviors are not organic expressions of well-being. They are attempts to reassure themselves and others that nothing has changed. The more they project self-sufficiency, the more they are trying to silence the internal alarm that your absence triggered. Indifference becomes armor. The hidden panic stems from a loss of emotional regulation. You likely played an unspoken role in stabilizing their mood, absorbing their projections, or responding to their needs. Without that external anchor, their inner world feels chaotic. But because admitting this would expose dependency, they deny the feeling and redirect it outward. What makes this dynamic particularly painful for those who leave is the illusion that they never mattered. In reality, your absence matters so deeply that it cannot be acknowledged. To admit the panic would mean confronting the truth that you were not replaceable in the way they claim, and that losing you disrupted something essential. The calm exterior is not peace, it is containment. And beneath it sits an anxiety they cannot soothe, because the very person who helped regulate it is the one who walked away forever. When a narcissistic person realizes you are gone forever, one of their most immediate psychological responses is to rewrite the story of the relationship. This is not casual reinterpretation or healthy reframing. It is a defensive reconstruction designed to protect their self-image from collapse. The truth of what happened threatens their sense of superiority and control, so it must be altered. Facts become flexible, motives are reassigned, and emotional realities are erased. In this revised narrative, they were never invested, never dependent, and never affected by your presence or your departure. This rewriting serves a crucial function. Accepting the real story would mean acknowledging that they were impacted by you, that they made mistakes, or that they lost something valuable. That level of accountability activates shame, which feels intolerable. So instead, they convince themselves that the relationship was insignificant, dysfunctional, or beneath them. You may be recast as unstable, demanding, or ungrateful. The ending becomes your fault, not because it is accurate, but because blame preserves their internal hierarchy. Over time, this narrative can become rigid. They repeat it so often that it replaces memory. Moments of genuine connection are minimized or mocked. Painful behaviors are justified or denied. Even clear evidence of their role in the breakdown is reframed as provocation or misunderstanding. This is why engaging them for closure often feels futile. You are not speaking to the same version of reality. You are speaking to a story built to keep them psychologically intact. This revision is not limited to how they think. It extends to how they present the story to others. Public perception becomes another battleground. By controlling the narrative externally, they reinforce it internally. Each time someone agrees with their version, it stabilizes the illusion. Each time they are questioned, defensiveness escalates. The goal is not truth, but coherence. What is rarely acknowledged is that rewriting the story does not eliminate the emotional impact, it only buries it. The discomfort leaks out through bitterness, contempt, or fixation. The need to keep retelling the story is itself evidence that the loss was never neutral. If it truly did not matter, it would not need to be revised. The narrative becomes a psychological cast, holding together an identity fractured by your permanent absence while preventing any genuine reckoning with what was lost. When a narcissistic person realizes you are gone forever, their emotional system often swings between two extremes, rage and withdrawal. Both are defensive reactions, not expressions of genuine feeling. Rage emerges when the loss is experienced as an injury to their authority or self-image. Your decision to leave permanently communicates something they find deeply threatening, that you acted independently of their control. Rage becomes a way to reassert power psychologically, even when real access to you is gone. It allows them to feel dominant rather than diminished. This rage may not always be loud or obvious. Sometimes it shows up as cold hostility, sarcastic remarks, character attacks, or sudden contempt. In other cases, it erupts as smear campaigns, impulsive outbursts, or aggressive attempts to provoke a response. The goal is not communication or repair. The goal is regulation. Anger feels activating and powerful, while vulnerability feels annihilating. By staying angry, they avoid confronting the helplessness underneath. Withdrawal, on the other hand, is the opposite strategy with the same purpose. When rage fails or feels too risky, they retreat emotionally. They go silent, disappear, or act as if you never existed. This withdrawal is not acceptance or peace. It is emotional shutdown. By cutting off feeling altogether, they avoid the internal chaos your absence triggered. Numbness becomes a shield. These two responses often cycle. Rage surges when the reality of your permanence breaks through. Withdrawal follows when that rage cannot restore control. Both are attempts to escape the same truth, that they cannot reach you, influence you, or undo what has happened. Neither response involves reflection or accountability because both are designed to prevent those processes from occurring. What makes this dynamic painful for the person who left is how impersonal it feels. One moment you are attacked as if you mattered too much, the next you are erased as if you never mattered at all. In reality, both reactions confirm the same thing. Your departure destabilized them. Rage means the injury was felt. Withdrawal means the injury was too overwhelming to face directly. Neither reaction is about you as a person. Both are about protecting a fragile inner structure from collapsing under the weight of a loss they do not know how to process. When a narcissistic person realizes you are gone forever, their focus often shifts quickly to finding a replacement rather than processing the loss. This is not a sign of resilience or emotional recovery. It is a survival strategy. Healthy healing requires introspection, emotional tolerance, and accountability, all of which threaten their psychological defenses. Instead of turning inward, they turn outward, seeking another person to fill the role you once occupied. The urgency of this search reveals how destabilizing your absence truly is. What they are seeking is not intimacy or compatibility, but regulation. You likely provided admiration, responsiveness, grounding, or emotional labor that helped them manage their inner world. Without you, their sense of self becomes shaky. A new person offers immediate relief, not because of connection, but because attention restores equilibrium. This is why replacements often appear suddenly and intensely. The speed is not romance, it is repair. This pattern can feel deeply invalidating to those who leave. It may look like you were easily replaced, as though the relationship never mattered. In reality, the very need to replace you so quickly suggests the opposite. If the loss were tolerable, there would be space to reflect. Instead, they rush to reestablish a familiar dynamic where they can receive validation without confronting vulnerability. Because this process is driven by avoidance, it rarely leads to growth. The same behaviors, expectations, and patterns reappear. The new person is not seen as an individual, but as a function. Over time, dissatisfaction creeps in because no external source can permanently stabilize an internal emptiness. This often leads to cycling through people, escalating demands, or renewed attempts to access former sources of validation. What remains unresolved is the original loss. Healing would require acknowledging pain, recognizing personal impact, and tolerating the discomfort of being alone with oneself. Instead, the focus stays on proving desirability, success, or superiority through another person's attention. This keeps the narcissistic system intact while preventing genuine emotional development. For the person who left, understanding this dynamic is crucial. The replacement is not evidence that you were insignificant. It is evidence that your role was essential and irreplaceable in the way it actually functioned. What they seek is not you, but the regulation you provided. And because that regulation came from you as a whole person, not a role, it can never truly be replicated by someone new. When a narcissistic person realizes you are gone forever, what your absence ultimately forces is a confrontation they spend their entire life avoiding, the experience of emptiness. This is not ordinary loneliness or sadness. It is a hollow, unstructured inner state where there is no stable sense of self to fall back on. Throughout their relationships, other people function as emotional scaffolding, giving shape, meaning, and validation to an identity that does not feel solid on its own. When you leave permanently, that scaffolding collapses. This emptiness is deeply unsettling because it cannot be fixed externally in any lasting way. Attention, admiration, success, or new relationships may temporarily distract from it, but the underlying void remains. Without someone reflecting value back to them, they struggle to feel real, grounded, or internally cohesive. This is why stillness feels intolerable. Silence becomes threatening. Being alone with their own thoughts brings discomfort they cannot name and do not understand. Instead of recognizing this emptiness as an internal issue, they experience it as irritation, boredom, restlessness, or dissatisfaction with life itself. There is often a vague sense that something is wrong, but no capacity to locate the source. Looking inward would require emotional honesty and vulnerability, which feels dangerous. So the discomfort is externalized. People become disappointing. Circumstances feel unfair. The world feels unfulfilling. Your departure becomes a quiet marker of this reality. You are not missed in a sentimental way, but your absence is felt as a destabilization of their internal structure. You were someone who absorbed emotions, provided reassurance, and offered consistency. Without that, the emptiness becomes harder to ignore. This is why they may oscillate between distraction and dissatisfaction, never settling, never feeling truly content. What makes this realization so difficult is that emptiness cannot be argued away or blamed entirely on others. It is a felt experience that persists despite attempts to outrun it. While they may never consciously connect it to your leaving, the timing is not accidental. Your permanence removed a layer of insulation that protected them from themselves.